what was really important for this investigation was actually we wanted to understand what the people within the Tony Blair Institute think about the Ellison money and what the TBI is pushing. And so we started reaching out to a lot of current and former members of staff, and we managed to in the end speak to like dozens. We got nearly 30 people speaking to us, and what most of them were saying was that they were really disillusioned with so they joined TBI because they wanted to do good, and they thought, this is an opportunity to do good in the world. They were doing previously kind of seen that they were doing a lot of like development stuff and a lot of work in poorer countries around the world. But then a lot of people told us they quite quickly became disillusioned because actually they were just pushing this tech narrative, and it was all about tech solutions and tech above all else. And there were, a few interesting anecdotes of like people who were doing, working in the advisory branch of TBI in places like Kenya or Guyana, and they were being told to push tech solutions and often AI solutions on the governments there to say like this could solve everything.
My guest is the award-winning journalist May Bullman, who specializes in reporting on marginalized groups, who was previously the social affairs correspondent for The Independent in the UK, where she gained recognition for her reporting on asylum and migration. She is currently the investigations editor at Lighthouse Reports, where she recently led the large-scale investigation into Tony Blair's Institute relationship with the multi-billionaire Larry Ellison, the founder of Oracle, where the Institute turned into Oracle's sales and lobbying operation.
Is Larry Ellison's company, but like that they're basically inseparable, the TBI and Oracle, so they're like working like that together. And obviously Oracle's interests are to sell Oracle products, whereas TBI is supposedly to try and find solutions for problems around the world, and they say it is using technology, but actually what the staff are saying, or the former staff are saying, that the reality was that it was kind of an Oracle above all else, or technology and AI like above all else, even if it's not in the best interest of the local populations where they're working. I think in America it's interesting to see what's been happening there, isn't it? Because you do see that like the media it's been very much weakened, and it's kind of like it's scary for me to see it, because I suppose Trump has basically threatened them into a corner in a way. Like they're scared that if it's up, then he's going to do something that's going to make things harder for them. I guess also you have got the issue of like certain people being in charge of like at the top of media corporations, who like Jeff Bezos, like for example, who's like very much on the side of like within the big tech space, and kind of pals with Trump and stuff. Luckily in the UK we do not have anything like that right now, but it does show you how that can happen. There is the digital ID scheme, which Tony Blair has been pushing for digital IDs in the UK like since he was in government, right? And now Keir Starmer's government has renewed that and is now saying that they're going to introduce digital ID. Interestingly, Starmer announced that a couple of weeks ago, like I think it was literally a day after the TBI published a report saying the UK should have digital ID. And they'd said that before, but like it was just the timing was kind of interesting. But in this report, the TBI really for the first time, because previously they've said, digital ID will be good because it will streamline things and like it will make it easier for people. But this one really focused on migration. It was saying, it will stop migrants because people, migrants won't want to come here if they have to have a digital ID, because they won't be able to work illegally because they'll need to have an ID card. But which is kind of bullshit, to be honest, because the fact is if someone's working under the radar and they're working undocumented, it means their employer is not asking them for documents, so then they wouldn't be asked for digital ID anyway. So that whole argument is kind of flawed.
This is a CEO Retort podcast, the show that fearlessly goes after the difficult topics that we all need to talk about, campaigns for issues that we're all concerned about, and invites some amazing, inspiring, and remarkable guests who will help us navigate through this fragile world that we all care about. I'm Tim Al-Sheikh. Let's get after it. May, I discovered your work purely by accident because I'm a huge consumer of YouTube. So that's kind of one of the reasons I became a podcaster kind of by accident. And I came across your interview with The New Statesman in relation to the work that you guys have done, which I thought was, to me, I had two issues. I was like, why is nobody else talking about it? Mm-hmm.
And I thought, okay, how did this even happen? And even somebody like me didn't know about it. It's like it's so hidden, and that's of course the relationship between Larry Ellison, the founder of Oracle, and the Tony Blair Institute. So, so I really want to talk a lot about that. But for those who probably don't know who you are, can we start with yourself first in terms of how did you get involved in this investigation?
Sure, yeah. How did I get involved in this investigation? Well, I actually, this is my first investigation about technology and AI. I work at Lighthouse Reports, which is a nonprofit investigative newsroom, and I've been at Lighthouse for about 3 years now. And I've mainly actually focused on stories around migration and asylum while I've been there. But technology has been a growing interest for me. I mean, partly just mainly because it seems to be becoming such a big part of our lives, but also in reporting on migration, it's kind of creeping into that space as well. So I've been noticing it's cropping up. It's being used to surveil migrants. It's being used sometimes to help make decisions around whether someone should be granted asylum and so on. So anyway, it's been a topic of interest for me. And then some colleagues of mine who work more in the area of technology were thinking about doing something on the Tony Blair Institute and looking at kind of where its money is coming from. Because basically the Tony Blair Institute was set up in 2016 by Tony Blair, and it kind of brought together a number of different kind of projects, different organizations he had at the time. But this one was going to be kind of bigger, and the idea was for it to do policy and advisory work around the world with a big focus on technology. But since it was set up, it's really ballooned in size, and now it's around 1,000 staff, and they have a big turnover each year. And we wanted to look at where the money's coming from, and also the influence it has both on the UK government and on governments around the world, because we were noticing it keeps coming up. The TBI is like they put out reports all the time, and reports to governments on how to do things and how to bring technology in to help improve things, and so that's kind of how we started on the project. And then quite quickly, a colleague of mine was looking at the donations it receives and so on, and where the TBI's money is coming from. And a huge proportion of that is from Larry Ellison, who, of course, is the founder of Oracle and briefly about a month ago was the richest man in the world. But now he's back in second place behind Elon Musk, who is a good friend of his, by the way. He's a very rich man. And he's also good friends with Tony Blair. And they've holidayed together on one of Ellison's islands. And literally he owns like the majority of a whole island in Hawaii, which is crazy. So we realized a lot of the money is coming from Ellison. And since like 2021, Ellison has been, through his foundation, which is called the Ellison Foundation, he's been giving a lot of money to the TBI, and that's gone up year on year. And then what we were noticing is that what the TBI is pushing is often kind of it's serving Ellison's interests in like some of its reports, even some of its reports for the UK government, which are around like how the UK can, do government better. There are certain places where it kind of, even it mentions Oracle sometimes, or at least pushes for these kind of policies that would be something that Oracle could get involved in, essentially like unifying a load of data on the NHS data and so on. And then we started, what was really important for this investigation was actually we wanted to understand what the people within the Tony Blair Institute think about the Ellison money and what the TBI is pushing. And so we started reaching out to a lot of current and former members of staff, and we managed to in the end speak to like dozens. We got nearly 30 people speaking to us, and what most of them were saying was that they were really disillusioned with so they joined TBI because they wanted to do good, and they thought this is an opportunity to do good in the world. They were doing previously kind of seen that they were doing a lot of like development stuff and a lot of work in poorer countries around the world. But then a lot of people told us they quite quickly became disillusioned because actually they were just pushing this tech narrative, and it was all about tech solutions and tech above all else. And there were, a few interesting anecdotes of like people who were doing working in the advisory branch of TBI in places like Kenya or Guyana, and they were being told to push tech solutions and often AI solutions on the governments there to say, like, this could solve everything. If you introduce, there was one case where a guy I spoke to said that he was being told to push for them to use drones to transport medicine during COVID, like transport vaccines. But he was saying, actually, this was quite high risk only because there wasn't any, it was to transport vaccines to more rural areas, but there was no guarantee they'd be able to store them at the right temperatures. And often, like with electricity power cuts and so on, that was not always happening, that they were able to store them at the right temperatures. So, but then he said when he tried to raise these concerns, he was just told by his seniors, no, like, just don't mention it. Like, we're going to just be quiet about that. We just need to push this solution. And whether or not that was because they were pushing for a certain company for their technology to be used in that is not clear in that case. But a lot of situations like that where people the staff at TBI just felt like they were basically doing tech sales for Oracle. So often actually they also were told to recommend specifically Oracle to governments and say, like, use Oracle for this, use Oracle for this. And then like Oracle staff and TBI staff would also have these meetings like every week. They'd meet up, and there's even one guy who it's very confusing on LinkedIn because it's like he works for TBI, but then it's like Oracle. It says Oracle, and he's like the liaison guy that goes between the two, like, the TBI and Oracle, to like, set up meetings and make sure that the TBI is aware of Oracle's latest product to push and this kind of thing. And they often do have meetings at TBI offices or meetings at Oracle HQ together. So there's just this like real kind of, they're just in what one former TBI member of staff said is like they're completely inseparable. Oracle, sorry, and just obviously, as I said, is Larry Ellison's company, but like that they're basically inseparable, the TBI and Oracle. So they're like working like that together. And obviously Oracle's interests are to sell Oracle products, whereas TBI is supposedly to try and find solutions for problems around the world. And they say it is using technology, but actually what the staff are saying, or the former staff are saying, that the reality was that it was kind of a Oracle above all else, or technology and AI like above all else, even if it's not in the best interests of the local populations where they're working, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Wow. Because one of the things that I did learn from your report that Ellison and Blair, they had a personal relationship for quite a long time. So what was it, sort of 2008 or something like that, or even before that?
So we know that Ellison donated, when Blair was in government, Ellison donated some, at one point, there's a photo of them shaking hands because Ellison donated some supplies for the Department for Education for like specialist schools. So they have it's a very cheery photo of them shaking hands at that point. And we know that they knew each other from that point at least. And then we know that there are various examples, like cases where we know that they've met since then and been on holiday together. So they go way back, basically, and they up to this day are friends, are good friends.
Yeah, well, there was this, I don't know if you saw this on LinkedIn, but there's this viral photo of the two of them together on the boat.
Yeah,
and I said, I made a comment that the good thing about that photo that they were both fully clothed, so that was good. So thankfully, absolutely, yeah. No, but that's great. But sort of, I'm kind of thinking in my head, sort of the cynic in me, because Oracle, as a company, is actually a very good company, and we do have listeners who are not necessarily involved in tech, but Oracle. Because you mentioned, for example, Elon Musk and Ellison. Ellison is one of the proper OGs of Silicon Valley. So he's up there with Bill Gates, with Steve Jobs, and so forth. The reason people don't know about him very much, he's not a household name, because he was always involved in databases. So in the world of tech, nobody cares about database. Everybody cares about the consumer-facing apps and games and phones, all that lovely stuff. Ellison, on the other hand, was always the data guy, which is kind of behind the scenes. And to be fair to him, Oracle as a tech is really good. I think everybody knows that. So what do you say to people that might say, well, hey, Oracle is a great company. Obviously, they should recommend it because it's more reliable. The database is really reliable, yada, yada. Even, some of the big names like AWS and Microsoft, their databases, even though they're sort of labeled as AWS database, is actually running on Oracle's database, which kind of creates another problem, which we can get back into in terms of his level of access to people's data.
Yeah.
But what do you say to the cynics that they might say, well, what's the big deal? I mean, Oracle is a very, very good company.
I mean, that's like fair enough. And, they may well be. And of course, like the TBI has every right to recommend Oracle where they genuinely think it's the right thing. But the fact is that a lot of the people we spoke to who had worked there were saying like they genuinely didn't think in this particular scenario that Oracle was going to be the best solution for this country or this government. And they were just told like at all costs, like we need to be first and foremost recommending Oracle. And in some situations, like even if it's good technology, like in some cases, it's not always the best thing to use their product. And, from what we were hearing, these people knew what they were doing, like a lot of very clever people work for the TBI, and they would assess what they think was best, but then they would be told, actually, no, because we need to get Larry, we need to help Larry out. And that was how you can tell to him, like, Larry, Uncle Larry. And it's, it's just this, there's just such a clear conflict of interest there, isn't there? And I thought just the fact that there wasn't really any room for suggesting other alternatives, which is not, that would be how any kind of advisory organization or any think tank is running, right? Like they should have all options available and be able to decide in which, in certain cases, something will work best and in other cases something else will work best, but it shouldn't just be one kind of solution every time purely because that person is giving you lots of money.
Yeah. No, that's true. And I speak from experience, and this is, I suppose for legal reasons, I should say this is my personal opinion. I mean, they are very good with databases, but they've been trying to get involved in all sorts of other different areas, including AI. And in my view, their AI was not that great, actually. I would not advise Oracle's AI. I mean, I haven't used them for a while, but I don't know what the level now. But certainly back, maybe I would say 5 years ago, I would not have advised using their AI. I mean, it's not bad, but for example, IBM, in my view, had better options. Microsoft had much better options as well, and that's even before OpenAI came out and all of that stuff. So it's like, so you're right. There are loads of other options for other services. But I mean, what Oracle they kind of did for quite a long time. They have been trying to effectively compete with the Microsofts of this world and Googles of this world to try and get out there with software and stuff like that. Sort of to go beyond their bread and butter, which is database. I mean, that's their core business. So you're right. I mean, like that's my sort of response to that potential cynical questions. Like, what Oracle is so good, so why not? Well, they're not the best at other things. I mean, databases maybe, but the other stuff they're not.
Yeah, and I guess just another thing to mention is like that they're good at databases, but is it the case that in terms of bringing data together, like that's Ellison's big thing. Like there's multiple videos and recordings of him saying like unify all the data so that the AI model can consume it. And it's like, is that always actually the best thing? In terms of UK government policy and what TBI's recommended there, they've often recommended that the UK bring all the data together. And I'm sure like in some cases, like say NHS data, that's a huge data set, right? And it's also really valuable because it goes back to like 1948 and it's huge population data. But, TBI is saying we need to bring all of that data in one place, and I suppose what I'm saying is that something needs to happen to that. Like that data is not in a good format at the moment, right? It's all over is what my understanding is. So there needs to be something to help to make it more, bring it together, make it easier for like different parts of the NHS to communicate with each other about people, medical history and so on. But what TBI wants is for it all to just be in one place and for a company to basically hold it and like then therefore like benefit from that, right? And potentially they can use it to train their models and so on, their AI models. And actually what a lot of tech experts told us for this story was that like that's not going to benefit the UK really. That very valuable data set can be used somehow to to benefit the country, but like by just giving it off to some company, that's not good for any of us really on the ground. So I guess, yeah, their big thing is data, but actually TBI is pushing for data to be brought together, and that's what Ellison wants. We've seen Ellison wants that. So that's another example of how like TBI is pushing what Ellison wants. But then also it should be questioned, like, is that the best way to go forward, to just bring data together and give it off to some private company? Yeah. And again, I'm not like super expert in all this stuff, but it just seems clear to me that there needs to be a question around data at the moment and personal data, and ensuring that it's not all just taken for AI to learn from it, like, it's just personal data about. It needs to be careful. We need to be careful with it.
Well, it's the issue of sovereignty, isn't it? I mean, that's the key point. And of course, I don't know if you saw my discussion with the author, Angus Hanton, who wrote Vassal State.
Yeah.
That conversation really opened up my eyes about, oh my God, it's like, this is, it's like whatever the cynic in me that would have said, yeah, because there are arguments from the, again, technical point of view, but I'm not going to get into it too much. But in terms of unifying the data, if it's all messy, you got all these silos or whatever, there's definitely an argument there, especially in healthcare. But the idea that you would want an American company in Silicon Valley to use that data to train its AI, that it's not going to be sitting in the UK, it's going to be in the US. So effectively, we are funneling data, our private data, to the US. And of course, if I had any doubts, I think these doubts don't exist anymore when I spoke to Angus, because we are literally selling off everything to the US. We are literally the vassal state of the United States. So you're right. I mean, that is a worry, I think. I mean, it's a very big problem.
Yeah, exactly. And it does seem like the government at the moment, the UK government, is fine with that, which is like quite concerning. And they're meeting, when you look at the ministerial register of meetings, like they're meeting a lot with big American big tech companies and the TBI, who are, pushing.
Well, they're linked, aren't they? Because it's Labour, isn't it? So Tony Blair and the Labour government, yeah.
And it is interesting, like politically, all of this, which came into our story as well, is like the Labour government at the moment seems to be very, very much listening to Tony Blair and the TBI. And obviously that's in some ways not a surprise, but it feels almost, it's a bit much, like the number of times that they're meeting up with the TBI. And we've seen email correspondence where they're like sharing policy documents before they go out. And, I know that as a think tank, to some extent, think tanks do this kind of thing, but the TBI is by far the biggest. It's huge as a think tank in the UK. It's by far the biggest think tank in the UK. And it, like, in the technology space, the TBI just has, I think, a far bigger influence than any think tank should on the UK government at the moment. And I think we were speaking before the call, but like there are some concerns about maybe the lack of expertise in technology within government at the moment. And we have to then listen to experts outside. But from what we understand, like they are listening to the TBI over and above, the TBI and big tech companies over and above anyone else. And actually, I think I don't know if you kind of followed the copyright row. There was the AI copyright stuff last year. Yes. Oh, no, it was this year actually, I think. But the government put out this proposal to which would to kind of change the copyright laws to enable like AI companies to be able to take from creative products, so like song and so on, and books and things, and to teach the AI model based on that. And the government put out this proposal kind of allowing for that. It wasn't completely giving them all the rights to take it, but it was very much like opening the door to companies to be able to do that. And it received a huge backlash, and that from people like Elton John and big musicians, and that caused a big problem for the government. But it just showed that they were really on the consultation of all that stuff. They were listening far more to big tech and the Tony Blair Institute than anyone else. So I think there is an imbalance there at the moment, which is a bit concerning.
Well, Angus did say that this government is the worst when it comes to effectively selling off our data and basically our assets to the US. Maybe it's because of the TBI. because
They play a role. Yeah, a big role.
because I always tell people, and actually I even brought in before the consultation, because I responded to the consultation, but I brought in Ben Mailing, Dr. Ben Mailing. So he's a mathematician that turned IP lawyer. So he literally knows the two sides of the argument, and he just called out the bullshit big time. He's like, and I also said it even back in the day with at Google, we never had a problem with copyright. Copyright was never a problem, but there was definitely this etiquette whereby, let's say, like, I can speak for my company at the time, my startup at the time. So we were building language models as well. So that was like in 2012, and the etiquette was as such, whereby if I am to use people's books or journals and things like that, we would only use that for our internal testing, research. Like, nobody has access to it, etc. If you put it live, you go to the authors and say, hey, shall we work together? Are you happy for us to use your data? And of course, now we can, agree on royalties and that kind of stuff. And that's been happening. And that's not new. Again, it's like, but again, so this whole bullshit that, oh my God, copyright is like, that is not helping us evolve with AI. I'm like, what are you talking about? We built AI way before this whole copyright nonsense. But you're right. I mean, it was obvious. And Ben called it out. Even that was back in, my God, when did I speak with him? March, I think, or April this year. So a while back. And he was like, he said, this is bullshit. It's that is just complete lie, frankly. And even my ex-cohort, one of my, who also now came out, Ed Newton Rex. So he's a huge campaigner for copyright protection of creators, etc. So he was involved. He was one of the guys at Google campus as well, building his AI startup at the time. So those of us who are involved directly in AI, who have been involved, we know that this is bullshit, and that's why I know that the CEOs know that it's bullshit. So I think all of that is kind of coming together very nicely with this investigation with the TBI. It kind of reveals everything, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's just it's the example of how American big tech is creeping in, right, in a very kind of insidious way as well. And I guess because Larry Ellison is less well known, as you were saying, so they've been able to do it quite under the radar in a way. But like I was saying, my colleagues who I worked on this with, like, if Larry Ellison was Elon Musk right now, and like it was known that he had this huge influence, he was giving huge donations to the UK's biggest think tank, who the government listens to on everything technology, like that would be quite
a huge story,
I think. Somehow it's just quite insidious the way this is happening, but it's a very clear, as you say, a very clear kind of example of how the big tech world is becoming more and more influential and just being listened to over everyone else, I think.
Which brings me to a question, actually. What was the trigger point? Because, like, as I said earlier, that I did not hear about this report. It was purely by accident, thanks to, interestingly, YouTube's algorithms, right? And because nobody knows, unless you're involved in tech, nobody really heard of Larry Ellison. It's not a household name. So therefore, so how did you guys, what was the, well, firstly, why did you focus on that specifically? Because I know, obviously, the TBI had a lot of money, whatever, but what happened that kind of rang the alarm bell for you guys to think, you know what, we need to kind of look into this, something is going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think because we've been doing, actually, my colleagues, really, I don't want to take the credit, because they've been doing a lot of work on tech and accountability. And I think with the TBI, like, it kind of, then it intersected a bit with politics, because, I mean, I was also noticing in the UK, like, UK policy, especially around technology, was TBI was just having, like, their reports, basically, they would put out a report, and then, like, in the weeks after, the government would announce something that very much reflects what was said in the report. But so I think, and then, it was more, to be honest, my colleagues who were aware of Larry Ellison and his, because I didn't actually know who Larry Ellison was really before. I mean, I'd heard his name, but like I wasn't, until I was looking into this story, I wasn't really, he wasn't really on my radar. As we, it was just that realization of, also looking at the donations and just how much money he's giving to the TBI. And I think that was the thing that really made us think, God, we need to look into this. And it was just it was really, as you pointed out, it was getting no media attention. And I kind of, to be honest, I hope now, because you said you came across it through the YouTube video. Obviously, we published it in the New Statesman, and it got quite a lot of traction. And I think actually, interestingly, with the kind of Gaza story and Tony Blair being involved in the Gaza Israel stuff, that stuff kind of that just came out just after our report. So in some ways, there's been that increased the attention on Tony Blair, which in some ways helped to kind of get the word out as well. Because as media outlets were publishing stories on the Tony Blair being involved in Gaza, this would then come into it, and they'd say also like this has recently been revealed. But it does feel like I don't know how much it's actually seeped into public consciousness now, the extent of this whole story of the TBI and how Larry Ellison is such a huge influence now, and how they're kind of pushing his interests. We want to do more stories on it to try and like get out to more people. But yeah, in terms of the trigger point, I think it was just the two things, like realizing TBI's influence in the UK, and then realizing how much money Larry Ellison was giving to TBI. Like, then we were suddenly like, God, TBI has a huge influence abroad as well. And like from doing, myself and my colleagues, from kind of doing some work more at the development migration space abroad, like we knew already that TBI had a big influence in countries in the global south. And so it was like, what does this mean for that? Like if Larry Ellison is giving money, like we need to look into that. And then from doing that, we found that even in these countries, like TBI is pushing things like self-driving cars in Ethiopia, when like we saw this report that very much, we saw like my colleague got hold of a kind of draft policy recommendation report by the TBI, and in the comments, they recommended self-driving cars for Ethiopia, and then in the comments, someone, we think from the TBI, was like, what did they say? They were just basically like, is this actually going to benefit the country? Like, like, yeah, how they can, the terrain in Ethiopia is good for like training self-driving cars, for like testing them. It was actually, is this all just about testing them? It's not really for the people of Ethiopia. So anyway,
it's like,
yeah,
use the poor country as a lab. And
actually as a lab, but then it probably won't actually ever, the people in that country won't ever see the benefits of it in the end, or maybe eventually, but yeah.
Well, people in our countries, the richer countries, aren't seeing any benefits from it. So it's like,
yeah.
But that's actually brings me nicely to the next question, because the investigation involved a lot of journalists. Like it's like you guys, like there was like a massive army of journalists. So, and that's what I really wanted to understand, because I guess maybe we should sort of step back, mostly for maybe people who are not aware of the Tony, or maybe they've heard of the Tony Blair Institute, but they don't know what it actually does. But can we start there? Because obviously it has, as you said earlier, they have a massive global presence, especially in the global south. So what do they do in these countries?
It's a good question. Yeah, no, I mean, so firstly, the Tony Blair Institute, so in the UK, it has more of a think tank functionality. Like it is essentially operates as a think tank, but a huge think tank, much bigger than any other UK think tank. A bit more like it kind of in the US, I think they have huge think tanks, and it's more like a US style think tank. But then, yeah, overseas, it's got more of this kind of advisory branch where like they basically have like teams of kind of consultant like think. So another thing to mention is since 2021, we were told by staff, and 2021 is when Ellison's money started coming in kind of thick and fast, the TBI. But since 2021, they kind of started getting more and more like consultant types. So people from like McKinsey and even like kind of big tech companies like Meta as well. But they were, and then they started paying much higher salaries as well. But the people who were posted in countries in the global south tended to often be kind of former consultants, and they performed a very consultancy type role where they would then be kind of embedded in, often, not always, but sometimes embedded in the governments in those countries, and they would be there to provide advice on mainly kind of technology and what they could be doing to solve certain issues that they have with technology. And so, yeah, it basically has this kind of advisory type function overseas. And given, Tony Blair's influence across the world, I mean, everyone kind of knows who he is, right? So with by former staff that like he would tend to kind of open the door. So he would go and have a meeting with the leader of whatever country, have a chat with them and be like, right, well, we can help you out. And then he'd like bring in his staff and they would then be like kind of embedded there and providing policy advice and advice on which technology they can use in certain areas and to solve certain problems that they have. So yeah, I mean that's the best describe it as kind of a consultancy advisory function.
But is it only on technology, or is there anything else? Like, does it influence any kind of policy, environmental policies, and healthcare policies or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I say technology, and actually, it's not all technology, but it's kind of always got a tech angle to it. So yeah. There's a like health policy team, and there's they do environmental like advisory stuff as well, which actually has proven a bit controversial as well because they published. Yeah, I mean, there was a report they published a few months back about net zero, which was more focused on the UK, to be fair, but that caused a bit of controversy. But they are like, it's not just purely tech, but what we were told by former staff, and what is kind of quite clear from their reports as well, is that very often, even if it's environment, if it's healthcare, if it's like social welfare, there will be a tech element to what they're recommending. So like, I'm trying to think of an example, like with healthcare, they're often advising like get everyone a kind of some kind of card or have a card to have all their health data on it.
Like the ID card that we're having a debate about here.
Yeah, exactly. And they're recommending similar in lots of other countries. So that's kind of the figure. And it like the TBI on the website, it even says like we're tech. I don't know the exact wording, but they say like technology is their like main thing, So I think while they work in lots of areas in terms of like they look at lots of different areas of government and different policy areas, often it will be technology that they are recommending that they bring in, to better, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That's very interesting because it sounds to me like they're not just consultants; they're more like sales reps.
Well, yeah, this is what I was saying. Like a lot of to us, and I think we quoted it in the piece that like they felt like they were sales. What did they say? They were kind of sales reps basically, or salespeople, and tech sales. They said, tech, that they are pushing technology all the time, and as much as they, a lot of these people who work for TBI are super smart, but I think a lot of them are also. I mean, we spoke to a lot of people who were not bought into it at all, and they left. A lot of them left because they were so disillusioned by it, and they just felt like, God, they're having to push technology at all costs, even when they felt that technology wasn't the solution. Actually, the solution would be something very different, and that didn't require technology, but it would always, in the end, have to be geared towards technology. But then a lot of the people in TBI are also very bought into it, especially the more senior people. Like they really think that technology is the solution, and I think that's one thing to point out as well. Like Tony Blair himself.
I know, yeah.
But he's just like, I need to get Larry Ellison. I need to like help Larry Ellison out and get him money. Like Tony Blair does really seem to believe like technology is the future. He's a real evangelist for technology. And it's hard to say whether he's just been used by Ellison as kind of a vehicle for selling things, or whether he kind of, I don't know, he genuinely thinks it's a good thing, and he's kind of. Yeah, he thinks Oracle is the best, and that's why he's pushing. But anyway, he does believe it. He and the people we spoke to, no one really had a terrible word to say about him. They were just like, he believes this stuff, but like he's almost a bit. It's almost like he's a bit brainwashed or something. Like he thinks it's everything. He thinks that's going to resolve everything, all the world's problems is technology. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something about AI, especially, that it's almost like a religion these days, which I never understood, because it's, well, and again, that's the thing that I call out a lot, because when it comes to AI, And you sort of alluded to the experts that worked for the TBI, and they said that, okay, it's not necessarily that the technology is bad, but if it's not the right technology, there are actually bad consequences. If you sell the wrong tech, because we see that with AI right now, for example. So this idea, that's why I kind of call out this whole stuff about AI, that people say that AI is a solution to everything, but it's not actually. It can't be, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. And I say technology, but a lot of that is AI now. Like that's
100%.
Thinks is the future. And it is scary because there are also some big tech kind of figures who do see it as a sort of religion. I mean, I was listening a while ago to like an interview with Peter Thiel, and like some of the stuff he's saying is just quite like outlandish. The
Antichrist thing or whatever. Apparently, I suppose people like me are the Antichrist now in his eyes.
Yeah,
because I'm not signing up to the bullshit, basically. But there's a reason why I don't sign up, because I know how this bullshit works. So I think that's the key.
I think having people like you saying it is really valuable, isn't it? Because you actually really understand it. If you were in it.
Yeah, I was in it, and that's why I mean, like the thing that worries me as well, and I do see most of the podcasters, not necessarily reporters, that they look at people like Peter Thiel or even Elon Musk, oh, they're just a bunch of morons or whatever. That, to be honest, maybe they are morons, maybe they're not, but I know this: they understand how AI works. Like I said, I tell people like building AI models does require really, really smart people. I'm not one of them. I hired them, right? I hired mathematicians and people like that. I learned from them. They feel like they showed me the ropes, etc. But I'm no genius. I tell people I'm not a genius. I'll never claim that I am. I just know how it works because I've seen it. I've I hired people, the best people in the world that know how to build it, and I learned from them. I've seen, of course, I was very, very, very lucky that I was in that very amazing cohort back in the day that had the likes of DeepMind and people like that, really, really smart people. I was the only guy. I think I was the only one who was not a mathematician. I'm a biomedical scientist by trade. But I think, the guys at Google, they thought they liked my perspective, because when I look at, for example, intelligence, I don't look at it as a mathematical thing. I look at it as a neuropsychological thing and as a biological process. And when you look at the discussions between the two, it's completely separate. The way I see this intelligence, it's not a maths thing. It's actually mysterious. We have no idea how intelligence works. In the world of bioscience, we don't know how it works. So when people say that, we've got this chatbot that resembles human intelligence, I'm like, so that means you figured out intelligence, one of the biggest mysteries in science for the past millennia, through a chatbot? I mean, no, you didn't, And I think that's the key. But the danger of this, I mean, at the beginning, I say, if it's like an academic debate, it's fine. But once you start pushing products out there, we are seeing consequences. And again, this is why I've been saying what I've been saying for a long time, that, misinformation will become a problem. It is. And we've seen that even tiny bit of AI in social media through the AI recommender systems that recommend you content, they don't have the human intelligence or intuition to know whether or not you should see that content. Hence, we're seeing X number of, how many number of teenagers harming themselves or committing suicide. The rise of mental health amongst children, especially 400% increase or something crazy like that. And that's before ChatGPT and generative AI. Now with generative AI, we're seeing rising number of psychosis as a direct result of that. Or people falling in love with the bloody thing, thinking that it's alive. Children making real connections. Like I put something on LinkedIn recently. There was this research that showed that some children that were allowed to use these AI models, they genuinely build a connection with it because they think that it's alive. And I'm like, and all of that, people like me been warning about. Not because I'm a genius, because that's just like, it's like saying, I bought a car and somebody wants to tell me, well, actually, no, you can if you shove wings into it, you can turn it into an airplane. And I'm just simply saying, no, you can't. You can just build an airplane,
Yeah.
That is the problem. That is the big problem right now.
Yeah, it's just scary, isn't it? Like, and it also, I just feel like in the same way that social media did, but like AI is just driving people like making people more isolated, right? Because they start to connect with AI, which is not a person. And it's just really, and then also I suppose like children are, but then adults are as well in a way. And that means adults are not so much there for the children, like to actually speak to, like there's just less contact on a real human.
Yeah. Mm.
And we're just all attached to our phones, and I don't know. But it's quite sad because as you say, like you saw it coming, and a lot of people probably knew this would happen, but yet they've pushed ahead anyway. And it's really, I guess, the big tech firms who are to blame for pushing that out there anyway. I mean, that there wasn't more like precaution or like let's because once it's out there, isn't it? With AI, I just feel a bit like, how do we go back from here?
No, well, that's the problem. And I mentioned this to you before we recorded that, my frame of thinking these days is that we need to start looking at the post-AI cleanup. When I say post-AI, I'm not suggesting that AI itself will die, but once the hype explodes and the bubble explodes, I'm happy to see that finally the media are talking about it. It's not just me or Jeffrey Funk like we did not that long ago. I think to me, it feels that we need to have a catastrophic crash for people to finally realize that actually that was a mistake. And I think there are other people that have been saying the same. I think Mo Gaudat did say that, we will go. I can't remember. I mean, I didn't actually see that. Somebody told me that he said something along the lines that we either need to go through the pain or we will go through the pain, for people to realize what's going on. I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, and we will. It's inevitable. So the question, of course, now I think it's not the opportunity necessarily. It's like, okay, everything crashes. There'll be, sort of using the financial term, there'll be blood on the streets. Mm-hmm. What's the cleanup? So that's my frame of mind now. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I mean, I would say, for the starters, maybe get rid of this whole Turing test nonsense. I've called out the Turing tests for years. I even did a video about it, I think, in summer 2022, so before ChatGPT, because the Turing test, we, in the world of AI, used it as a way of fooling people in believing that whatever they're talking to is conscious. So people think, the Turing test is this thing. If your AI model passes the Turing test, therefore it's intelligent. I'm like, no, actually, if you pass the Turing test means that we've successfully fooled people. We just know how to do it. And Turing himself never intended it to be that way. It was more like a general kind of comment he made or something. Like, it wasn't like some kind of a framework that we have to follow. Yeah. He even made the point, I can't remember how he stated it exactly, but it was something along the lines that there will be a point where people wouldn't be able to tell the difference between a machine and a human. So that was kind of a comment. It wasn't a test per se. So I'm thinking, like, for the starters, forget the Turing test, because this idea that machines can be like humans is just nonsense. Just focus on the idea that these machines are amazing at certain things. They can do amazing things in science. We talked about healthcare, etc. Yep. Leave it at that. This whole, companion nonsense, this whole friendship nonsense, that doesn't solve any problems. In fact, it makes it worse, as you said, in terms of loneliness and so on. I mean, that's what we need to start. That's how we need to start thinking about it. But I wonder, what would the TBI say?
I know. I mean, they have recommended like AI agents and things like healthcare, and I mean, which I think is probably too far. Using an AI agent and being like as a GP talking to someone. Yeah, it seems a bit. So I don't know. I mean, I think they would probably be like quite on board with keeping it. But also, do you think that can you take that back from people now? This whole thing of like companionship. Like, do you think it's possible to remove that? I don't know, ability for people to access this sort of AI?
Well, that's the thing. If people have become overly addicted to it, it's kind of like, can you take social media away now? I mean, that's the problem.
It's there, right?
Yeah, once it's there, it's there. But the thing is, I suppose the silver lining, which it's actually bad for business, because one of the reasons, again, and I've always been very transparent about this. Like, one of the reasons as well, like when I was calling out that we need to be very careful about what we do with AI, because we're going to lose trust from the public towards AI, and that's actually bad for business, right? And so why would and again, I did warn about it. It's like, if you don't regulate it, people are not going to like it. People are going to say, look, you guys are basically using us as guinea pigs. And I think I did, and I even mentioned, I think it was like there was this event at Tortoise Media during the pandemic, and I there's a probably recording of it on YouTube somewhere. I actually made the point at the time. I said, we need to regulate this thing. You need to regulate people like me, because I can, if I want to, create whatever the hell I like, and no one can stop me. Like I told people, there's like to kind of to freak them out, that the only thing that is stopping me, or somebody like me, to take advantage of your data, to build models that can manipulate you, can control your behavior and stuff. The only thing that is stopping me is me not wanting to do it. Like there's no regulation that says, "Oh, Tim can't do this." No.
Yeah.
If I decide right now to do it, I can do it. Nothing or anyone can stop me. And I'm thinking, are you guys comfortable with that?
Like really, what the best?
Exactly. So I think the silver lining is the fact that more and more people are losing trust in AI. So much so, I don't know if you saw this, that Apple, and I find it quite funny, again, because you see people in tech who don't understand tech. They say, oh, Apple is in trouble because then they're behind AI. And I'm like, guys, Apple's sales of the iPhone are booming. And one of the key reasons is because it does not have AI. So people are switching from Google products, because Google is obviously pushing Gemini into people, right? And you don't really have the choice. So people are saying, well, actually, no, we don't want this stuff. So they're switching to the iPhone. So Apple's iPhones, like I think the latest iPhone is the #1 phone in the world. And I think the second spot is one of the smaller ones. The third spot is one of their older ones. And the fifth one is one of the very older ones. And like I think Samsung is somewhere in 6th place. Okay, so you're seeing that. So hence, even from the business opportunity perspective, is how for you to not to be anti-AI, but again, going back to the basics, where you use AI for the things that it's absolutely fantastic at, but you don't basically use it as a way of companionship or try to aggressively grab people's data, that sort of thing. That's the opportunity. And Apple saw it. Apple saw this coming. I mean, I'm not sure if they believe that they could build. I think they believe they could build their own LLM, and they kind of failed because it's not an easy thing to do. I don't know, but certainly I think the silver lining is the fact that once people lose trust in AI, then potentially we can start kind of pulling things back.
Yeah.
And then people will have to get some kind of therapy. I mean, that's the problem.
Yeah, no, the lack of trust thing is interesting. I mean, the TBI actually published a report, I think a few weeks back, about the lack of trust in AI and how we need to do something about this. Is really concerning, and we need to convince people that it's okay. And
stop lying. How about that? That would be a good start. Or misleading. I mean, I don't know if they're lying. That's the thing. The other thing with people like Tony Blair, like I said, the issue is that you have people like that, and he doesn't understand the tech. But he does believe in it for whatever reason. So the problem with belief is that sometimes you can push things. You're not lying intentionally. Kind of like the flat earthers, right? They're not trying to lie to you,
and they believe it. But
they believe it.
Yeah, and I obviously technology is complex, isn't it? Because as you pointed out, there are areas where it can be really helpful in like trying to come up with, cures to diseases. Like it can be used in a responsible way to do things like that. But it's just, I don't know. I guess with the TBI saying, no, people don't trust AI, but it's like people rightly don't trust AI because they don't understand it. And like you can't then just be pushing it because you don't really understand it either. But we can't be trying to force people to trust it when they've had every reason not to trust it, because it is actually really dangerous. Like, and that should be listened to. The fact that people aren't, there's been all this polling showing that the public are not trusting it. That shouldn't be like, oh no, now we need to make them trust it. It's more like, let's act on that and let's actually maybe row back on certain things that are harming people and that are causing the people not to trust it. Rightly so.
And I literally ask people. As I go to events and stuff. Although I started not to get invitations to some events. Like I say, I burnt a lot of bridges. Like oh well, but the thing is, it's like no people. Because one thing I also don't like is again the likes of Peter Thiel. Like he's calling people like me, antichrist. But you'll see a lot of this pretty negative description of people who are not signing up to AI as their bunch of Luddites, etc., etc.
Yeah.
They're not Luddites. They just the reason people don't trust AI, as I alluded to, it's us, the tech people. We failed. We failed at showing people the positive side of AI because we decided to be stupid, greedy, and push the nonsense. That's all. That's what we've done. And people say it. People aren't stupid. I think one of the advantages, I guess, perhaps of social media that people can see for themselves what happens when people completely lose their minds with AI. People could see the whole psychosis thing. It's nothing to do with the media because the media aren't reporting this properly either, right? So it's like people can see for themselves what's going on. And they're like, well, I'm sorry, I don't want anything to do with this. So they're not being Luddites. They can see that how we, the tech sector, are failing them, failing their trust. So when they ask why they don't trust us, well, look yourself in the mirror. That's why.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not like, oh no, for some reason they don't trust us. We must force them to trust us. It's like, no, like it's because of what big tech has done. That's why they don't trust you. They're not happy with how AI is, what AI is doing right now. So let's change that. Let's not just try and force them to trust us blindly. Yeah.
For those of you who followed me for a while, you would know that I'm neurodivergent, meaning that my brain is kind of unpredictable. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It has its own mind, so to speak. But one of the things that I really did struggle with my entire life, including today, is focus. So I was terrible at school as a result of that. I couldn't focus at university. I can't even focus when I'm working on my desk. And the big problem for me was figuring out ways to help me do that. The strategy that worked for me my entire life was actually music. But I would spend hours, literally hours, figuring out the songs that work best for a particular mood, whether I wanted to focus on something or wanted to relax or wanted to sleep, whatever it is, I would have to find the right song for that. And it kind of worked, though it wasn't predictable. Like I said, I would waste a lot of time trying to figuring out until I discovered our new partners, Brain FM, who actually used real science to figure this issue out and build an app that creates functional music engineered to sync with your brain. I'm telling you guys, this is real science because they actually created a patented approach that as many of your brain cells, your neurons, are bringing all of the electrical signals to focus collectively into that one task that you're doing, or even if you want to relax or if you want to sleep. I absolutely love the interface. It's super simple. You can just choose what it is that you want to do, whether you want to focus, you want to relax, sleep, or meditate. And you can build your own list of some of the favorite songs that they produce. And I have to highlight that a lot of these songs are actually produced by real human composers. And it's lovely, lovely app that you can download onto your computer, your mobile phone, or you can just listen to it online. It's really simple. It's really cool. But above all, it works. If it works on my brain, it should work with your brain as well. So if you check out brain.fm/CEOR, and you'll see a dedicated page to our podcast, and you will get an exclusive, really, really long free demo that you can just download the app and listen at your leisure. No limitations. You can try it for yourself and see if it works. Let me know if it does work for you, because I absolutely fell in love with this thing so quickly, like within a couple of weeks. And I thought I have to reach out to these guys because also I want to support independent businesses. So check out brain.fm/CEOR, and the big thanks to Brain FM for supporting the podcast. And now back to the episode.
You mentioned earlier, and actually we had a conversation before the recording, that you got attracted into this particular investigation because you're one of the, I think you're the lead editor, right? You're the lead editor of the investigation. But
there were actually like quite a few of us working on it. But yeah, I was one of the lead.
There's a lot of people, I know.
Yeah. Anyway, it was kind of 5 of us mainly working on it, and then there are others who kind of fed into it in different ways. Yeah.
But because you mentioned to me that because your work predominantly involves, sort of your area of expertise in journalism is people's displacement around the world, the refugee crisis, etc., and the causes of all of these things. And of course, you saw a link between this investigation, the impact that it may have had on these issues. So what did you discover in this area?
Yeah, I mean, I think I alluded to it briefly at the start of this call, but so I've like for like a decade, since I really became a journalist, I've focused a lot on migration reporting and the movement of people around the world, and looking at policies by governments, especially the UK and European governments, to try to reduce migration, and how they've constantly kind of failed, because they approach it with a very much law enforcement lens rather than a like, why are more people moving, and a kind of how can we manage that better rather than how can we just push them away. But I guess there's two things to mention. I mean, one is just, I guess, the fact that it's kind of interesting that the TBI is very much present in countries in the global south, often countries where people are trying to leave from. Although they aren't working in kind of places where there are serious conflicts. Well, generally they're not. But I was interested in that. Like the TBI was interesting to me because it's come up in some of my reporting before, just as like, because they've been in that country, and I've been like, like wondering what they're actually doing. But then I guess the bigger thing for me is that I've done a lot of the reporting on migration in recent years. That like as I've been reporting on it, technology has become increasingly present as well. So, or it's cropped up in my reporting. So, say with asylum decision making, which I've done some looking into, like the fact that like the way that governments make decisions on asylum claims and the speed at which they do that. I've found out that in the UK at the moment they're trialing this AI tool to help them make decisions on cases, and then there's also kind of looking at the surveillance of the English Channel, where obviously a lot of small boats are coming from France to the UK, but how they have these AI watchtowers that can like detect whether something is a small boat or whether it's just a normal ferry or whatever. But like it's interesting because that's proving to not be that effective, but it's very expensive. A lot of these towers are like Anduril, the big US company that makes these towers. And then like various other things. Also in the UK, they're trialing this facial age estimation technology using AI. That's like they want to start using it to assess the ages of asylum seekers when they arrive. And so like it just, I guess all of this has made me realize like the influence, well, the presence of technology and how governments are trying to, a bit like what the TBI says, like it's a solution to the problems. And with migration, it seems to be really being pushed as this solution to making things more efficient, but also to like deterring migration. Another thing to mention here is the digital ID scheme, which Tony Blair has been pushing for digital IDs in the UK like since he was in government, right? And now Keir Starmer's government has renewed that and is now saying that they're going to introduce digital ID. Interestingly, Starmer announced that a couple of weeks ago, like I think it was literally a day after the TBI published a report saying the UK should have digital ID. And they'd said that before, but like it was just the timing was kind of interesting. But in this report, the TBI really for the first time, because previously they've said, digital ID will be good because it will streamline things and like it will make it easier for people. But this one really focused on migration. It was like, it will stop migrants because people, migrants won't want to come here if they have to have a digital ID because they won't be able to work illegally because they'll need to have an ID card. But which is kind of bullshit, to be honest, because the fact is if someone working under the radar and are working undocumented, it means their employer is not asking them for documents. So then they wouldn't be asked for digital ID anyway. So that whole argument is kind of flawed. But then when Starmer said he's going to introduce digital ID the day after, he was really pushing at this migration angle, like, we can prevent illegal migration if we introduce these ID cards. And so I guess I just feel like technology is being used in the migration space to try and like it's being pushed as this solution. But actually the only people set to benefit really are like the big companies who are going to benefit from, taking on that ID scheme. If that is the case, I mean, we don't know yet how they're going to do it, but that like I don't think it is going to deter migration, basically. And I suppose one other thing to mention is just the kind of politics around migration. Like, I think it basically, I think like say Tommy Robinson, the far right activist in the UK. I mean, he organized this massive march a few weeks back. and in London. And I actually was there for some of it. I was kind of intrigued to see what it was like. And it was really kind of a horrible environment, to be honest. Loads of England flags everywhere, and like a lot of people drinking and getting drunk, and quite a lot of violence. But at that march, Elon Musk addressed the crowd, and I wasn't there for that, but I watched it on online, and it was just interesting because Toby Robinson, or his real name Stephen Yaxley Lennon, but he like thanked Elon Musk after he spoke for like giving me this platform, and like, you know, thanks to Elon who gave me this platform on X to like organize this. And it just made me like realize like, God, Elon Musk has actually had a real role to play in like this far right movement in the UK right now. And I guess it just made me reflect on how, because then you've got Ellison in a much more insidious way, but kind of creeping into UK politics and policy. And then you see, I guess, in terms of the media, like in the US, you've got Jeff Bezos, who owns a big newspaper now, and like Larry Ellison is also set to take over TikTok, which is kind of scary.
I was about to say,
yeah. So you just see that big tech figures not only pushing technology, but they're also kind of taking more of a hold of like social media and the media and what gets put out there, I guess. I don't know if I've explained this very well, but I just feel like, and migration is obviously in the US and the UK and other Western countries like a big topic at the moment, and it's really driving far right movements. And if you've got these big tech companies like so much allowing for the spread of these myths around migration, like they're clearly playing a big role within that space as well. So it's just this crazy thing of like big tech's just creeping in every way. And from my reporting, I've noticed it more and more. And that's why I guess I was interested to get involved in the TBI investigation, to like do some investigating of technology and AI and who are the influences behind it, so that going forward, I'm still reporting on migration, but having a better understanding of that technology and how it works and who the big players are is really important, I think, for any reporter, not just tech reporters, you know? So
yeah. No, that's great. And actually, you highlighted very interesting points there as well, because I don't know if you saw my conversation with Pat De Bruin, who's the head of big tech accountability at Amnesty International. And
yeah, all of it.
You mentioned Tommy Robinson, because obviously we had the riots in 2024 post the murders of the 3 young girls, and basically what they found at Amnesty, that the algorithms, I suppose one of the good things that Elon Musk has done, that he released we open sourced the algorithms for Twitter or X, and they found that it's by design pushes all the hateful content online to increase engagement, which of course means more ad revenue, etc., etc. And of course, I was not surprised at all when I saw Elon Musk's face in that so-called demonstration. I mean, to me, that was just kind of far right march, as far as I'm concerned. Obviously he was there because that would just he'll cash in, right? Twitter or X will cash in big time. And you also mentioned in terms of the migration, all these cameras and all these, facial recognition, or rather age recognition, facial technology, which is complete, which by the way, it doesn't work, because the problem, like there's a tiny problem, which is actually the good thing about data science behind the AI, is that it can reveal the problems. So, for example, if you were to train, because I've seen actually there's a lot of research on this, but for example, when you try to recognize somebody's age through their face, people with darker skin are always seen as older than they are. And in fact, we've seen even with police racism, that they treat young black people as if they're adults. They don't see them as children because they don't look childlike, which is a racist thing, because obviously they would look at, say, lighter skinned child. Oh, it looks more like a child, right? But a black kid or a dark skinned kid, they look a lot older. There's that kind of thing. But that is actually reflected on the data, the training data, and AI simply replicates that. So that's why it fails every single time. And again, people behind the tech know this. But yet they get all the contracts, they get, all the nonsense, because why you highlight with the migration, every so-called solution that they've introduced, it does not actually, it doesn't actually solve the root cause of the migration.
It doesn't. Exactly. It's failing to actually get to the root of the issue. And actually just all it's done, if you're looking at the example of the UK and the small boats crisis, like what they've done with more surveillance, they've got so much surveillance in the channel now, it's crazy. Like these watchtowers, they've got loads of drones above the channel. They've got some aircrafts that they fly out all the time. And they've got like on the boats, on border force boats, they've got cameras taking pictures of all these boats. And all it has done actually, like that, coupled with giving France more money for the French police so they can try to like physically intercept people before they get into the boats. That's actually just driven, honestly, it's like made it worse. Like, because more people are dying, for one, because people take longer routes to try and avoid police and to try and avoid the drone, and they go around like much longer routes. And then they're having to sail for a much longer period of time, and often that can get into difficulty. So there's been a lot more deaths in the channel. But it's also just not stopped people from trying, because people are still going to try, and like these people are desperate. They have reasons to come to the UK. They might have family here, or it might be because of the language. And like when you actually look at other parts of Europe, like Germany or France, they take in a lot more asylum seekers anyway. So this idea that everyone's trying to get to the UK is just not true. But I think it's just this big law enforcement, like surveillance approach, is just making it worse, to be honest. And it's also meant the smuggling networks and the smuggling gangs who are like facilitating these crossings have actually become more and more advanced, because it's got harder. They
have access to the same tech.
yeah. I think they're really like they use a lot of smart technology. I don't know exactly what, but they are like in on that stuff as well. And also, like, it just means people really can't do it on their own now, so they're more reliant on these smuggling networks. And they've just become super advanced now, and like they adapt to whatever they have to adapt to, and it just won't stop things. And I get it; it's like a tricky issue, and obviously you don't want anyone crossing the boat crossing the channel on a small boat, because it's dangerous. But I think over like the last however many years, like it's been proven that this approach of trying to use more tech and of trying to use more law enforcement to stop it and like build walls higher, metaphorically and physically, doesn't work to stop people from trying to migrate into the country. So any more legal routes, really, because at the moment, if you're an asylum seeker, there really aren't really any legal routes in the UK now. There's an Afghan resettlement scheme, but that's been they've just closed those Afghan resettlement schemes that they had. And there's nothing for like Sudan. There's nothing for Syria now. There's nothing. I mean, to be fair, the situation in Syria has changed, but there are still some people who need help from then. And all around the world, you've obviously got people fleeing conflict. And the only way to claim asylum in the UK is to get to the UK. But to get to the UK, you don't have any legal route to get to the UK. So it's this system, right? So yeah, it's just a mess.
And the other interesting thing also, just I had a funny thought in my head. Is like, so they've got all that tech. So let's say the tech detects that there's a boat. What do? Like, the boat still has to land on the UK, right? So it's not like they're going to do anything.
If anything, I mean, it might slightly help with search and rescue, but I mean, they've already got the drone. Yeah. But yeah, there's nothing you can do. So it's interesting, actually. I think Andrew has put out some stuff on this tool, and there's also a good academic actually on LinkedIn if you want to check it out. Called Sam Story, who's like done some research into all this and has made like a video about these Anduril towers and what they see, and like they can spot these boats, and they kind of the research shows what they actually see, but then they can't do anything, and they treat it like it's some kind of war, like the way that But then the reality is that all you're gonna do is like pick that boat up and bring it to England. It's so silly. Yeah,
it is silly. It's actually as silly as an example with them. I had another guest, Henry Nash, veteran entrepreneur in tech, and he mentioned to me years ago when he was in Silicon Valley, there was like this. Of course, they were advertising AI about everything, whatever. So basically, there's this company apparently that they were building these four-legged robots, right? So basically, they were building it for delivery. So delivery, Amazon stuff or whatever. Now, one of the biggest problems that they had to solve, and they needed money to do that, to build algorithms so that these robots can figure out ways to step safely over homeless people.
Oh my God!
And I'm like, So you've got a problem. Okay, so the problem that we have is homeless people. So the solution is, how do we design robots that can step safely over them? And I'm like, and then they wonder why people don't trust the tech sector.
Yeah,
this is it. This is another example.
Yeah.
So that's like, so when you were talking about this tech to monitor, it's like, again, you're not solving the problem. Okay, so you detect some boats. Oh my God. Okay, so just bring them into land. So I'm like, so what did you actually achieve?
Exactly. It's like this kind of overexcitement over technology. Like, oh yeah, we can get big watchtowers to spot the boats, or like we can have these robo dogs or whatever to like deliver Amazon parcels. And it's like, we don't really need these things, and they're not really serving a huge purpose. And actually, why don't you try and solve that? Like, why don't you try and solve homelessness with AI if you're going to, instead of like walking sleepers, or why don't you actually try and solve the migration, like the root of the migration problem with
the same
AI.
Money?
Do you know what I mean? With the same, it's hugely expensive, isn't it? This tech.
Yeah.
It's just, such a waste, really.
No, it is absurd. But as a last thing, because like we can I think talk about this for ages. Because one thing I wanted to ask you, sort of maybe a little bit of fun as well, because I have been accused, quote unquote, that I'm a journalist now. I'm like, huh? It's like, I'm not a journalist. What are you talking about? Because on a serious note, I don't see myself as that, because there are more and more journalists right now that are being targeted, they're being attacked, and there are more journalists who are disgruntled by the news media corporations. So they're all going freelancing, and they're all doing it alone, etc. So, but it's an important role. So as a fun question, like for a noob, a wannabe journalist, how did you become a journalist? Because I do also have a lot of young people that always ask me questions like this. It's like, we don't know what to do with our lives and stuff like that. But from your point of view as a journalist, what was your journey as a journalist? How did you become a journalist? And, why did you choose to become a journalist?
Yes. So when did I decide to be a journalist? I mean, when I was like at school, I like writing, but I didn't know at that point I wanted to do journalism. It was only when I went to uni, I studied English literature and French. And the first couple of years was like, to be honest, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was just having fun at uni.
Like all of us, right? Like all of us.
Yeah. And then my third year, I had a year abroad. So I was in, because I did French. So I was teaching. I was actually, I was like, maybe I'll be a teacher. So I was like a language assistant in a teacher on the suburb, like on the outskirts of Paris, which was actually really interesting. It was like in a very poor area. And I guess it got me thinking. So I was kind of living in Paris, and then I'd get a train out, and it kind of helped me to, just to see like the difference in how people live. But I mean, not that I was already kind of aware of inequality and everything. And I was quite kind of conscious that I felt uncomfortable with it. And I did a bit of blogging actually when I was abroad, because I liked writing, and I was like blogging about this and how my experience of teaching. But I also realized I didn't love the actual teaching element of it. So I was like, okay, I don't think I do want to be a teacher, as interesting as it was. But then I finished that in like the April of that year, and I still had a big summer ahead of me. And I was like, because I've been doing this blogging, and then the student newspaper at my uni, which was Southampton University, I started doing a couple of pieces for them, and I think they'd said, because they'd seen my blogs or something, they were like, oh, do you want to write anything? So I did a bit of that about my experience abroad, and then I was kind of like, oh, this is quite fun, like publishing stuff. But then I went to Senegal in Africa, because they speak French, and I like just through my auntie, I kind of knew someone there, and I was just like, I'm just going to do it. And I did a bit of work. So I knew someone at the BBC there, which was like quite lucky. And I kind of did a couple of months, it was only about 5 weeks in their office. I was really inexperienced as a journalist then, so I wasn't actually able to do that much. I was kind of more just like seeing how things work. Yeah. And then I had a few weeks left there in Senegal before I had to come back to uni. So I wanted to do some more journalism, but my like little stint at the BBC as a work experience person had ended. So I went around some of the local papers in Dakar, the capital of Senegal, and was like, can I do some writing for you? And I wanted to like practice writing French as well, because I don't know, I was feeling quite like keen to do something more before I had to go back to uni. And eventually one of them was like, no way. And they like screwed up the CV I gave them. And like, so it was quite hard to find someone who would let me do some work for them. But then one paper let me like come in and just write some articles and like, pitch some ideas. And I was able to go out and interview people. That was really fun. I wasn't paid for it, but like it made me just realize I wanted to be a journalist basically. And then I got back to uni and I was one of the editors of the student paper when I got back, because I just like suddenly was like, this is what I want to do. So that was good experience. But yeah, the stories we were doing at uni were not very serious. I was working for, I don't know if you know of the Tab. The Tab is like a big student.
Yeah.
Like sensationalist like publication. But it was all quite silly stories about student life. But then, so it's very long-winded. But then I do want to do journalism. So I was trying to figure out the best way in. The thing I did, which I don't think you have to do, but I did a master's at, so there's a few masters you can do. I think there's like 5 different places that do quite good journalism masters. I did one in London at City University, and I did get you can get bursaries if you apply for, like, there's different bursaries you can get. So that luckily covered most of it, which was helpful because it was quite expensive. And then it was good that because I was just with a load of other young people who wanted to be journalists, so it really got you like into the mindset of journalism. And then towards the end of that time, there was an editor from The Independent that came in and did a talk, and I went over and chatted to him, and I ended up doing some shifts at The Independent. And then I did a couple of other smaller internships at other publications. But then as I finished my master's, that was when the kind of Syrian refugee crisis was happening. And like, that was, I think I mentioned to you before we started recording, but it was when the image of Alan Kurdi, the little boy who washed up on the Turkish coast, had kind of gone viral. And also when shortly after that, the Calais jungle, the big camp in Calais in northern France, was being dismantled. And I got really interested in it, and I started kind of pitching stories for The Independent about these issues. And it took a while, to be honest, because for a long time I was just shifting there, and it's hard to get a job in journalism, right? It's like competitive industry. I was quite lucky because I had a relative who I was able to like stay with in London for a bit, because it was expensive to live in London. But I kind of got writing about the migration stuff, and in the end, eventually the editors at The Independent were like, oh, like you can do some more stories on this. And I was also having to write a lot of other stuff, like a bit more kind of clickbaity stuff, because it is very clickbait at them.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But I then basically was at The Independent for like 7 years, and mainly covering social affairs. So I became social affairs correspondent after a couple of years, and it was really good experience to be there. And high pressure though. I'd say like most national newsrooms are very high pressure. You have to produce stories a lot, as in you send a list of ideas, and then I'll be expected to write up at least one of them each day. So it's harder to focus on the longer term stuff. But it was definitely a good experience. And then like 3 years ago, I came to Lighthouse Reports, which is a very different kind of concept, and it's very not mainstream. It's non-profit. It's very independent. And it's much smaller. But we just do long-term investigations, and we work with big mainstream media outlets to publish our stories. And it's very collaborative, and we always work with journalists from different outlets on each story. And I think it's quite nice to be at the end. At Lighthouse Reports at the moment, because the media landscape is, as you mentioned before, like a lot of people are being laid off. It's just an increasingly difficult environment, I think, to operate in. And then you've got like social media constantly. I guess actually, in a way, social media's been good in some ways, because it's allowed people to do journalism, like to get things out there without having to be have a staff job as a journalist. So in that sense, it's been good. And also like different mediums, like video, like podcasts. Like I know you say a lot of journalists, and I guess you're not, but like this is a sort of a form of journalism, like asking people, questions and doing interviews. But then at the same time, like social media can also mean fake news is spread very quickly, and you've got people out there putting stuff out who are not like legit, or they're spreading falsity, fake news basically. So I know there's probably a growing mistrust in the media as well, partly because of that now. And I think it's just, a difficult space. But I feel fortunate to be working at an outlet where like I can kind of not beholden to like a big corporation who owns it, which is nice. But yeah, there's always a bit of a pressure as well as a journalist to like reduce stuff and make sure, come up with a good idea and ensure that people are gonna. You want obviously people to see your stuff, but that doesn't always happen because there's so much noise out there at the moment, like online. There's like, and I think people generally, like even friends of mine, family, are like switching off a bit from the news because it's just so much of it, right? It's so overwhelming, like depressing, and I kind of understand why people are doing that. But obviously, it is hard as a journalist because you can never really switch off from it, and yeah, it can mean that you feel like people aren't going to read your stuff as much if they're like turning away from the news. But yeah, sorry, that was so long. I don't even know if that was like made any sense, but that was kind of my journey.
That actually, it kind of highlights a very interesting picture of where we are today, I think, as well. Because as you said, there's the lack of trust in mainstream media is so low. I kind of like the tech. They brought it onto themselves, I think. And now what we see in the US, like they've capitulated to the Trump regime. And these are the media, like on the left and the right. It's like all of them seem to decided to say, we're too scared of Trump and we're not going to hold him accountable. I'm like, well, so what's the point of your existence then? And again, people see that. So what do you think is the future of journalism now? I mean, I'm thinking Trump kind of exposed the weakness, I presume, right? We thought Brexit would have done the same here. And of course, we had the Liz Truss situation, etc. And now with Keir Starmer, the media are not pro Keir Starmer, but then people pro Keir Starmer and the media aren't scrutinizing him, which is kind of, for example, the TBI thing. You would have thought that the right-wing media would jump all over it. But then the problem is Larry Ellison is a very, very right-leaning funder. So they wouldn't dare and criticize. So it's all kind of connected and so messy. Hence, I'm not surprised that more and more journalists basically quitting. So do you think is the future of journalism, or rather, what do you think is the future of journalism? I mean, is it the model that you guys are doing at Lighthouse Reports? Is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think in America, it's interesting to see what's been happening there, isn't it? Because you do see that like the media is it's been very much weakened. And it's kind of like, it's scary for me to see it because I suppose Trump has basically threatened them into a corner in a way. Like they're scared that if it's up, then he's going to do something that's going to make things harder for them. I guess also you have got the issue of like certain people being in charge of like at the top of media corporations who like Jeff Bezos, to be honest, like for example, who's like very much on the side of like within the big tech space and kind of pals with Trump and stuff. Luckily in the UK we do not have anything like that right now, but it does show you how that can happen. And I do think, I mean, you are seeing more and more kind of independent outlets cropping up, or like, independent outlets with who rely on donations, who actually are doing really well. And it goes to show this model can work. And I suppose the issue with journalism is that previously, like, people would buy a newspaper, right? Before kind of, like decades ago, I mean, like before there was really the internet and like people would read their news online, like, and even I suppose until like 10 to 20 years ago, like more people would be buying newspapers because that's how people read the news. And actually, I still think like reading a newspaper is nicer than looking at it online. But even me, I don't really buy it much because they are expensive. And like, you're like, I can just literally go online and see them. But so people stop paying for their news. And then that's led to this kind of churn and this clickbait, because it's like the only way media outlets can get profits really is like through advertising. And then you just need more people to look at your stuff and it's all about clicks. But maybe what's happening now is like we're almost going, because there's more distrust in the media and like big media outlets are kind of becoming weaker and I don't know, like less independent as well, that maybe we're going to see more and more like independent. I think we already are like independent or non-profit smaller outlets that are going to hopefully grow, and people will, because of donations, people will be paying for their news again in some form, but just in a more sort of selective way, I guess. It will be, just basically maybe it will be less like massive corporations who own multiple media outlets, and those media outlets being the main ones. Maybe there will just be this growth in like slightly more grassroots media that are more independent. I guess the only concern with that is, well, I don't know. I mean, if you have to pay for, if everyone just pays for the one they want to read, then it might be a bit sort of people just see a selective element of the news. But then that's what it used to be like, I guess, when people used to just read.
Cognitive bias, you mean, like people just gonna sort of stick to their bubbles, as it were?
Yeah, but that's kind of what really happens online, really.
Yeah.
It like the way that people are fed whatever they are used to seeing or whatever they want to see. So, yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful that there will be more of these, like smaller outlets that will hopefully be able to grow. And I just think the independence of it is really important as well. That I hope it doesn't become that like mainstream media just becomes more and more controlled by the powers that be, because that's just scary. And that you do have that in some countries now, right? Like where there's authoritarian rule.
Yeah.
But it's really important that journalists if there's young people out there who want to be journalists, like definitely do it, because it's a really amazing job, and it like there's never a dull moment, and it's tough, especially to get into it. Like my first few years as a journalist, that was like my main focus in life, was like you have to like do the hard graft, but it's super rewarding when you're in it. And even though it's a bit of a depressing landscape at the moment, like it is worth it, and hopefully things are going to get slightly better.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, I'm not young, but at least I'm a noob at this thing myself.
Do it.
No, I'm going for it. No, I'm enjoying it. To be honest, but I never thought, like I say, it's a rabbit hole that kind of dragged me into what I'm doing right now. So I'm still involved in tech a little bit, but even now I'm dismantling my company to try to create it more into a non-profit. So kind of going back to the point I made earlier, that like I'm looking at sort of the post AI bubble solution. And I think, again, it has to be an AI that is designed for social good. But unfortunately, nobody will fund that from the commercial side. So therefore, I'm going down the route of nonprofit. So that's a new thing I'm looking into. So it's an interesting journey, and I definitely encourage people. I think it is competitive. I'm not sure there's not much money in it because a lot of people do it.
Yeah, exactly. And there's kind of seems to be less and less money at the moment, I think. But you have a lot of people who just set up their own podcasts or their own channels or their own social media, which I think can be really great. But then, of course, the money, as someone who's just set up their own thing, you're not going to necessarily get money immediately, at least.
No.
So
I can certify that you don't.
Yeah, exactly. But no, it's going to be fine. And there are still, like, as much as we say, like in the UK, there are still a lot of jobs in newspapers, and the media in the UK is still going, and there's quite a few great jobs you can get. But if you can't get them, like, there's other routes in as well with sort of smaller independent outlets, or even kind of, I guess the other thing is like having a bit of a presence online is helpful. Show that you've been, putting stuff out there already off your own back, and then you can kind of show that you're keen to do this kind of work. But so certainly it never gets boring.
So no, that's cool. So as an end, because I know we're reaching the end now. So if people want to find out about your work, where can they go?
Yes, they can go to, I'm still on X, but I don't love it anymore. So I've become a bit like YouTube. I was trying to get a bit more active on LinkedIn, but basically my name is May Bullman, and for both LinkedIn, Blue Sky, and X, it's just May Bullman with no punctuation. And then you can check out the Lighthouse Reports website. I think it's just lighthousereports.com. That's where we publish all our stuff, but all of our stuff is also, all our publications also go out in more bigger mainstream media outlets, but there's links to them on the website as well.
Cool.
Yeah. Thanks for an interesting conversation.
No, my pleasure. No, thank you for joining the small community that we're building in here. Because the idea is that I want to bring all real experts and real voices out of the clickbait shadows. Speaking of clickbaits, because unfortunately, I feel the narratives are being controlled by people who, not just in tech, I think just beyond tech now as well. It's like people who are not necessarily experts. They're not necessarily good at what they do. And they're just very good at communicating and very good at generating the clickbaits. And I think that's a big problem. We're seeing the consequences of that after 10 years of these people. So that hence the mission here is that I want to actually, ignore these people and get, real heroes like you, May, out of the shadows so that more people can hear about you and the work that you do, because it's important work. We need to understand what's going on around the world. If we want to solve whatever problems we want to solve, we don't need to shove AI into it, but rather look at the root of the problem, understand it, solve it. Then maybe AI could be useful somewhere. Who knows?
Yeah, no, totally. I think it's really great what you're doing with this podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So with that, everybody, the links for May's work and everything will be in the description. So May, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. Well, my friends, this is it. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, before I go away, if you are on YouTube, please make sure that you hit the subscribe button below. It really makes a massive difference for the growth of our channel. And if you're following us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you need to give us a star review. Apparently, your following means nothing unless you give us a star review. Don't ask me why, but give us whatever star review that you think is fair. And if you're not following us, what are you doing? Come on, man. It doesn't cost you anything. It really makes a big difference. I really, really appreciate your support. But also, if you've got cash to spare, consider to become a founding member. We are an independent medium. We're not reliant on any kind of company that gets money from Russian oligarchs or any kind of weird sponsorships or anything like that. All of the companies that work with us are genuine companies that I know and I like. But ultimately, it's the members, you guys, our subscribers, our followers, our founding members, or those of you who actually just donated us like $1 here, a couple of bucks there, $5 there. All of that makes a big difference. This is what makes us truly independent. We're not chasing clickbait because we don't want clickbaits. We want facts. We want the truth. We want something that we can all aspire to and something that truly make us at least work harder to make the world a better place. Not just talk about it, but actually make it happen. And of course, it supports all of our campaigns as well. So my friends, thank you so much. Much love. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.